but also whether you put in new workers' rights, which I'm not sure many people think are going to make a really good difference to the good workers who do the right thing or the good employers. A bit of a backlash in the House of Commons yesterday with Angela Rayner, with her workers' rights bonanza, it's been called, costing so much money. She said her reforms are pro-business, they're pro-growth, a new era.
This is typical socialism, typical Labour. They never understand where the boundaries are, where individuals should be left alone.
Labour's new Workers' Rights Bill gives enforcement officers powers to enter your home and search your property. Yes, you heard that correctly. Government agents with the authority to arrest business owners for workplace infractions. If this sounds like something from an authoritarian regime, rather than modern Britain, you're not alone in your concern. Labour's pro-worker legislation could create the most hostile business environment we've seen in decades. But mainstream media isn't telling you the full story.
This was shortly before it was explained to those Labourites, Ange and the gang, that actually the world doesn't work like that. Or that no employer, company owner or boss would be able to phone or email or contact or text their staff to talk to their bosses. Horror of horror after 6 p.m. Try being a journalist. I'm sorry, news editor, it's 6:05. You can't call me now.
Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Are we witnessing the rebirth of Soviet-style workplace regulations wrapped in modern packaging? Labour's new Workers' Rights Bill feels less like progressive policy and more like a time machine, transporting us back to an era when all business owners were cast as villainous factory barons straight out of a Dickens novel.
This is typical socialism, typical Labour. They never understand where the boundaries are, where individuals should be left alone. Or that no employer, company owner or boss would be able to phone or email or contact or text their staff to talk to their bosses. Horror of horror after 6 p.m. Try being a journalist. I'm sorry, news editor, it's 6:05. You can't call me now.
The most revealing aspect of Labour's approach was their initial proposal to ban employers from contacting workers after 6 p.m. This idea was so wildly disconnected from the realities of modern work that they were forced to hastily withdraw it. But the damage was done. The proposal exposed an outdated mindset that views employment as fundamentally exploitative rather than cooperative. This us versus them mentality betrays a fundamental misunderstanding of today's workplace dynamics. The vast majority of UK employers aren't moustache-twirling Victorian industrialists looking to squeeze every last drop of labour from their downtrodden workers. They're ordinary people running businesses, often struggling with the same economic pressures as their employees, while trying to create stable jobs and positive work environments. The irony is that the UK already has some of the strongest worker protections in the developed world. Employees currently enjoy generous statutory holiday entitlements, parental leave provisions, and workplace rights that many other countries' workers can only dream of. The problem Labour claims to be solving largely doesn't exist for most British workers. Angela Rayner's fingerprints are all over this legislation, and it's not difficult to see why. Her political identity has been built on class warfare narratives that paint business owners as natural oppressors. While her working class background is admirable, her perspective seems frozen in time, unable to recognise that modern employment relationships are far more nuanced and mutually beneficial than the industrial conflicts of the past.
They had to get rid of that rather extreme clause, by the way, but it is still a very extreme act that makes life very difficult for companies, for bosses. Enforcement officers for this law, for the Workers' Rights Act, will be given powers of arrest, so they can arrest people, to force themselves into people's homes, to actually, like the police, to burst into people's homes and search them for documents, laptops.
The most troubling aspect of this approach is what happens when government officials with arrest powers start policing normal workplace interactions. Will a manager who texts an employee about an urgent project after hours be subject to investigation? Will employers who need flexible arrangements with their staff find themselves treated like criminals? The bill creates an adversarial framework where cooperation once existed. The adversarial framework Labour is creating doesn't just create tension, it fundamentally reshapes the relationship between employers and the state. When enforcement officers have powers to enter your premises without warning, confiscate business records, and potentially arrest you over employment decisions, we're no longer talking about worker protections. We're talking about a surveillance state that treats business owners as presumptive criminals. These enforcement mechanisms rival police authority, yet lack the same oversight and procedural safeguards. In democratic societies, such intrusive powers are typically reserved for serious criminal investigations, not workplace disputes. The bill's approach bears more resemblance to enforcement mechanisms seen in countries with authoritarian tendencies, where business owners operate under constant threat of government intervention. For small and medium enterprises, the backbone of the British economy, these provisions create a genuine climate of fear. Unlike large corporations with dedicated legal departments, smaller businesses lack the resources to navigate complex regulatory frameworks. Many small business owners operate from home offices or small premises, meaning these enforcement powers could literally bring government agents into their living rooms over a workplace disagreement. The chilling effect on recruitment will be profound. When hiring becomes a potential legal liability, employers naturally become more risk-averse. Rather than taking chances on candidates with less conventional backgrounds or those seeking to re-enter the workforce after gaps in employment, businesses will gravitate toward safe hires through personal networks and recommendations. This doesn't just hurt employers, it devastates opportunities for those who most need them, including young people seeking their first jobs and those from disadvantaged backgrounds. We've seen this pattern play out in countries with similarly heavy-handed approaches to employment regulation. The typical result isn't better working conditions, but rather reduced formal employment opportunities and increased use of contract workers. Businesses find ways to operate with fewer permanent staff to minimise exposure to regulatory risks, creating precisely the kind of precarious employment the bill supposedly aims to prevent. Perhaps the most bitter irony is that legislation designed to protect workers could end up harming them. Job creation doesn't happen in environments of legal uncertainty and excessive regulation. When every hiring decision carries the risk of triggering government intervention, complete with powers of entry, search and arrest, the rational response is simply to hire less. Workers gain little from protections that make employers reluctant to employ them in the first place. When all is said and done, this workers' rights bill reveals Labour's fundamental disconnect from economic reality. The tension it creates isn't just unnecessary, it's actively harmful. Experts have repeatedly warned that excessive regulation creates artificial divisions between employers and employees, ultimately hurting the very workers it claims to protect. This isn't speculation. History has shown us time and again how over-regulation backfires, resulting in job losses and deteriorating economic conditions across multiple sectors. What Britain needs isn't more bureaucracy and surveillance, but a government that understands how prosperity is actually created. The foundation of economic growth isn't mistrust and confrontation. It's allowing businesses the freedom to innovate, expand and hire without fear of government intrusion. As this legislation progresses, we're facing a critical choice about the kind of society we want. One where cooperation and economic liberty flourish, or one where the heavy hand of the state suffocates the entrepreneurial spirit that built this nation. The future of British employment hangs in the balance,